Welcome everyone. Today's webinar is titled Quantifying Value, Working Through the Math. This is another half-hour webinar in our monthly series of thought leadership in the area of pricing, sales, and marketing, sponsored by LeveragePoint. LeveragePoint is the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a SaaS-based collaboration platform that links all cross-functional team members involved in building and executing a value-based strategy. You can find out more about us by visiting our website at www.leveragepoint.com. That's where you'll find a recording and download of the slides for this and all our previous webinars, plus much more. During the webinar, if you have any specific questions or comments, please feel free to enter them in the right-hand panel in the questions section. Later in the webinar, we'll respond to as many as we can. And now I'd like to introduce today's speakers. Ed Arnold is Vice President of Product Management at LeveragePoint. He directs product design and development and drives the go-to-market strategy. Roberto Rivera is Director of Professional Services, helping our customers understand and capture the value of their products and services. Take it away, Ed.
Thanks very much, Aaron, and thanks to everyone for watching today. We're really excited at the big turnout for this topic, and we think we will plan to make this a regular series in our webinars. Now, over the past year or so, Roberto and I have worked with over a dozen enterprises to help implement their value-based strategy. And we're delighted to share some of our experience and tips to what is always a challenge, especially for companies who are in the beginning of this process, which is quantifying value. So we have a short presentation planned, roughly around 20 minutes or so. So we have time at the back end for any of the specific questions you might have. And the topics are pretty straightforward. We're going to share a couple of specific scenarios that we run into frequently. Intangible value is one, and bundled offers are another. So maybe, Roberto, if you can share a little bit of context of why are we talking about value today?
Excellent. And as you know, if you know LeveragePoint, this is what we're all about: is helping customers quantify the value they deliver in the marketplace. So, from our perspective, the more you can show and demonstrate to your end customers how you impact their business, the more successful you will be. Because if, let's say, you put yourself in the shoes of your customers, they're looking to work with vendors that understand their needs and can deliver solutions that improve their business operations. So for many of our customers, quantifying the value they deliver is becoming a key competitive weapon, right? It's not only supporting better price setting decisions, but it's also supporting them in how they develop their marketing and sales communications. And what we see is that a solid understanding of value is helping them retain customers, is helping them go after new customers with more compelling value propositions. It's reducing the amount of discounting they're seeing. They're able to set price levels that are more aligned with value. And they're also launching new offerings that are truly differentiated in the marketplace and therefore more successful. So, you know, in order to get there, in order to be able to quantify value, we use a methodology and a process that makes you break things down into more manageable pieces. So what you're seeing here is a process for how do you get to the point where you can begin to quantify value. And it starts off with identifying the features that your products and services deliver in the marketplace, translating those features into benefits. And for the most part, a lot of marketing and sales organizations are very adept and good at doing that. The next step, which is in many cases a big challenge for a lot of our customers, is how to turn those benefits into quantifiable value that demonstrate how you impact your customers from a cost and revenue perspective. So with that, you know, that's the big challenge, right? That's what we're trying to address. And I'll turn it over to Ed. I think we have a polling question.
Yeah, in terms of challenges, and we've encountered multiple challenges in working with our customers. let's put up this polling question that says, what challenges have you experienced in quantifying value? Now, some of the ones that we see are, how do you quantify intangible value? How do you quantify the value of a bundled solution? How to compare value versus an in-house or a free alternative? How to estimate value for a new product or innovation? And how to defend the value of a mature commoditized product. So these are ones that we see often. I'd like our audience to vote on the ones that they encounter, and you can vote as many times as you want if you want to do all 5 of these. If there's one that is not on the list, feel free to add that in the panel under the questions tab in the panel, and we'll make note of that as well. But I would like you to take a moment here and vote on the ones that you encounter in your business. All right, so the poll is open, and we're going to give it a little time here. While we're waiting, Roberto, I'm wondering if you'd care to make a prediction on what we're going to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely run into all of these questions when we work with customers. I would say that customers are maybe a little bit earlier on their journey towards value-based strategy or value-based pricing. They may start off on the new product side, kind of trying to really understand the value that new products deliver into the marketplace, the differentiation, all the investment in R&D, what's that mean from a customer value perspective. And we also run across a lot of customers that are thinking about bundling different solutions together, providing more of a one-stop shop for their customers. So maybe bundles is another key area of understanding value.
All right. So I'm going to look at our colleague here to see if we should close the poll, or are people still voting? All right. So we'll keep it open for another few moments here. So you're thinking new product innovation being high, and bundles, certainly we've heard a lot from our customers, and I know some of our customers are on this broadcast right now. I think I'd have to agree with that, Roberto. I think those are going to be probably the 2 top ones. But then again, who to tell? All right, so the results are up, and oh my, okay, so intangible value, 76%, which is great because we're going to be talking about that in a moment, and versus number 2 would be new product innovation and commoditized. Okay, excellent. So we'll definitely be covering these other topics in a later webinar, but we've got some great content here. All right, so let's move ahead to the slides. All right, so when we talk about intangible value, which I know many of you are interested in this topic, we're talking about things like brand, quality, expertise. These are really important differentiators that are hard to quantify, and in a way it reminds me of a show that I've seen on Animal Planet, Searching for Sasquatch. You may have watched it yourself, but it's a team of researchers who are going out into the misty forest, and they know that there's a Sasquatch out there. It's just a little bit out of reach. And I think when we first start working with companies, that's sort of their attitude about intangible value. Fortunately, it's a much easier to quantify value of your brand and other intangibles than it is to find a Sasquatch, and it's probably a whole lot safer too. So let's share some of our insights about quantifying intangible value. Well, for one, it's really important. And the reason for that is with competition being so keen in many markets, the so-called intangible things are really your key differentiators. It really accounts for a significant amount of your offer. And you might not know what it is, but I bet you many of your customers have a pretty good idea of what that's worth. And that's really why it's important to quantify value. Another key insight is that it's not a binary thing. I've seen people talk about this as hard dollar savings versus soft dollars. I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. In reality, you have a continuum of value drivers, from very straightforward to measure, say energy savings, which is pretty unambiguous, to medium, hard to measure, things like efficiency and productivity, and then very hard things to measure, like increasing market share or goodwill. Any of these things can be measured. It's just the amount of time and effort to actually do so. And what we want to say is that, the things in the middle of the continuum are actually quite doable. We're going to show a couple examples of that. And the way we do that is by breaking down these broad benefit statements into very tangible customer benefits. And we're going to show an example of how we typically do that. So Roberto and I are going to role play this process that we typically have. And so on the left, you see the first typical statement that we hear. We have a very, very strong brand. Now, Roberto, when a customer says that, what's your response?
Well, what I want to do is dig a little deeper, right? It's try to understand what brand means. So my question would be, what would brand mean to one of your typical customers?
And a typical response could be something like, well, it means that we have the most reliable product in the industry.
So good. So from my perspective, we're getting a little deeper than brand, and now we're looking at reliability. So my next question is kind of peeling that onion. Why is that important to your customers?
Well, one reason is because unplanned downtime is a big issue for them.
So now we know that unplanned downtime is an issue, and now we can begin to uncover what are some of the consequences of unplanned downtime. And for that, we would want to understand how often would unplanned downtime happen with your competitor. We would also ask, how would that impact your customers' operations? And ultimately, we'll challenge you and say, if you had to measure this, how would you go about measuring the impact of unplanned downtime on your customer's business? So here we have a set of examples of formulas that can be used to start to assess and evaluate what's the impact of unplanned downtime on your customer's business. So an example would be unplanned downtime has an impact on non-productive labor, right? So you have all this labor that are maybe sitting idle or not as productive because of the downtime event. You may also have an instance where you may have to call in an outside resource to come in and get the line back up and running because of the unplanned downtime that you have, and there's a repair cost to that. So here you see we've been able to put some assumptions, some variables and formulas together that would help us quantify that. Another big time would be around potentially reducing potential lost sales. So if downtime is preventing you from getting product out the door, that can have an impact on sales as well.
So here we have three specific economic impacts off of that particular benefit, reducing unplanned downtime. And of course, there are others as well, right?
Yeah, this is by no means exhaustive, but should give you a sense of the type of things that you can begin to put numbers around.
Right, and they also vary according to industry. And actually, we've got a couple industry examples here to show what unplanned downtime looks like. Now, these come from our customer experience, but I will say to anyone out there that these are disguised examples, so names and numbers and dates have all been changed to protect confidentiality. But here's an example from the industrial machine component industry. So, Roberto, what's going on here?
Yeah, so we have an industrial component that is able to reduce the rate or eliminate the rate of contamination in the line, and therefore can prevent unplanned downtime events. So here, the way we're seeing this quantified is by understanding what's the cost of unplanned downtime, how many events occur over the course of a period, and by what percent you're able to reduce that by would give you an indication of the economic impact that your solution provides to preventing this for your customers.
Okay, and we have another example. This is from the construction products industry. again, downtime for them means schedule delays, right? You have a building that's being built and there's a leak in the foundation. And so, Roberto, what's the story behind this?
So the story here, we're dealing with a waterproofing solution designed to prevent leaks. And, you know, if you're able to prevent leaks, you're in essence keeping the project up and running and eliminating the potential for very costly downtime. As you know, in construction, you could have a huge crew waiting for this repair to be done before they can complete their work. So, again, different variables apply to different industries, but the logic and the way that you can put together a framework for calculating the impact, it's absolutely doable.
Yeah, and note that, you know, the value here is always quantified in the customer's metric. So here you're talking about per square foot. That's the metric in the that's the metric that the customer uses. So even if you're talking about, you know, your brand means how much is it saving me per square foot. All right, excellent. So another intangible issue that we run into is when a customer says something like this, you know, we provide superior industry expertise. It's not our brand, it's our expertise. So Roberto, how do you respond to that?
So we would go through the same process we did with the previous example and try to dig a little deeper and say, okay, how does this benefit a typical customer? Mm-hmm. And again, we put together some examples related to expertise in terms of how expertise may help your customers increase efficiency and provide better customer service as well. So in this particular case, we're looking at 3 examples of increasing efficiencies for around production output, how your expertise enables your customers to do that, how your expertise is able to reduce their instances of customer service issues. So if things are running smoothly, there may be less opportunities for customer service complaint interactions. And another one that we commonly see, or as an example here, is being able to reduce your customer churn.
And again, this does vary by industry. And here's one example, and this comes from a consumer products manufacturer. So what does efficiency mean for this customer?
So this particular example, we're looking at efficiency from the perspective of being able to get a product to market a little bit faster than you would if you didn't have that expertise that you provide as a supplier, as a vendor. And here the key variable here is the number of months time saved, which is 3 months. And by putting together some assumptions around retail sales, margins, if you're able to reduce time to market by 3 months, that can have a significant impact. And we're seeing, a significant portion of our customer base, using this type of language, this type of formulas to communicate the value they provide to their expertise.
All right. So next we're going to move on to another issue in quantification, that is quantifying bundled offers. And, we work with customers who put together custom solutions using a combination of products, modules, services, etc. And every bundle is different for each type of customer that they deal with. And often they will say to us, okay, LeveragePoint, we get that we can quantify value for a particular offering in isolation, but what happens, when you combine them? Much like this bag of groceries here, you have the milk and the bananas and the broccoli. What's the combined value of that? And our response to that is, well, there's a lot of insights here because bundling is a complex topic. And the first thing to note, and I think this is no surprise to anyone, it's that it's natural for customers to want a discount for a bundle, right? This is a well-known price sensitivity effect. There are a number of them that we're aware of. But this one says, look, the more I buy, the bigger the volume discount I deserve. And this is very natural behavior. Now, the reply to that is critical to understand that the distinction between volume the cost efficiencies of volume versus the value of an integrated solution are two different things, all right? So to take the grocery example, if I'm going to the warehouse club and I am buying a 50-pound bag of oranges, well, I'm going to get a discount for that because I'm buying in large volume. But if I'm only buying a dozen oranges and some apples and a pineapple and a couple kiwi fruits, I'm not going to get a volume discount for that because there's value in having that selection and being able to buy at specific quantities. So that's a phenomenon we're calling 1 + 1 = 3, and we'll illustrate what that means in a moment. The key thing here is to provide customers with viable and fair trade-offs of product and services. So maybe they don't automatically get a volume discount, but they do get some additional services if they buy a certain amount, like free delivery. That's what a lot of companies that differentiate in bundled solutions tend to do. And we think it's really useful to look at some examples in other industries, especially in the consumer products industry. So let's take a look at those. And this first one comes out of the software industry, and this comes courtesy of a colleague of ours named Tom Luck, of Value Management Advisors. And this is Adobe Photoshop, and you'll notice that the difference between the personal version and the pro version is almost 10x. And that's in terms of the user cost. Now, in terms of the amount of software, it's not 10x. Actually, it's much less than that. Why is there such a premium on the pro version? Well, because there's a set of functionality in that software that is designed for the professional photographer, say the wedding photographer who's taking thousands of pictures, who needs to be able to manage them, be able to alter them, crop them, color correct them, a lot of things on a fast scale. And that's worth it. The normal customer would not ever want to use these, therefore, why give them away? Roberto?
Yeah, and another common example, we want to be a little bit faster here. I know we're in a time constraint. Another common example would be in the auto industry. We know that if we want to pay a cheaper price, we may have to give up some of the features that we would really like. So in this particular example, if you want a bundle with package with spoiler and bumper protection and body side moldings, you're going to have to pay a little bit more than you would if you just went with the base model. So those are just examples from the consumer industry.
Right, and the key is you got to put together packages that your customers really care about, which means you really need to understand what your customers care about. So we're going to work through a quick example here of how this works for the B2B industries. And here we're borrowing from the chemical industry. And this first value model, and for many folks who've watched this, they know that this is an economic value estimation model, EVE model. Here we're showing the value of a differentiated product, a chemical catalyst that has some particular properties that provide better efficiency, manufacturing, as well as tech support. So you'll notice that this green area is quite high. So a lot of differentiated value for that on a per unit basis. And we'll compare that to another product which is on the mature end or the commodity end of the business, where there's a tiny bit of differentiated value, sometimes no differentiated value at all. It's a type of material that can be sourced from a number of different suppliers, including local ones. And then the question becomes, how do you put these two together in a bundle? So here we have, the 1 year volume for the specialty catalyst on the left, the commodity catalyst on the right. Put them together, give me a discount, right, Roberto?
Well, that's not necessarily the case, because if you're able to demonstrate that you're delivering, in fact, more value by selling those two standalone offerings as a solution, perhaps you can mitigate the need to discount by proactively demonstrating to the customer the value that you're delivering.
Right. So how do we do that? Well, let's take a look. So here we've taken the two products, we put them together in one value model, and we actually put it into a 3-year contract. So you see all the three value drivers that we've had before. You got your efficiency, tech support, reliable supply, But wait, there's another value driver here. Wait, I should be getting a discount, so why do we have another value driver, Roberto?
Yeah, because in this particular example, by combining those two standalone offerings into one solution, we're actually increasing the efficiencies for the customer. We're providing more value. So the way we would kind of break that up and be able to demonstrate to the customer is by having a single source of supply, a very reliable source of supply. You can in fact reduce your processing and ordering costs, and here we can break that into a formula that would show the time savings and the efficiencies gained by that. And you may also be able to reduce the amount of inventory you have to keep on hand because you're working with a complete solution provider. So these are two what we would call formulas that combine to show what the impact of being able to sell a bundle solution represents for that customer.
Yeah, and that's an example of 1 + 1 = 3. All right, so let's take a look at this from a multi-year view. So, Roberto, what's going on here?
So what we're looking at here is a breakdown of the value that you're providing over time. And in this particular example, over 3 years. And what you're seeing in your yellow bar is that your price may be a little bit more expensive than the competitive alternative, but over time you're providing significantly more value. And therefore, this particular example allows you to quantify things more from a capital budgeting perspective and show customers what the payback is or what the NPV is at a specific discount rate to really demonstrate that by combining your offering, you're able to derive significant benefits to the business.
Yeah, and we're really excited because this just came out in last month's release, this multi-year view. It's something that our customers have been asking for a while, and we're really happy to provide it. All right, so let's see. Just to wrap up, in conclusion, if you want to successfully differentiate yourself on value, it's really important that you quantify it. And of course, there are numerous challenges in the nuts and bolts of quantifying value. We illustrated two specific scenarios today, but we want to point out that with the right tools and methodology, the work is pretty straightforward. It's still work, but it's definitely something to do that's within the grasp of any product or marketing or pricing or finance manager. Anybody can do it with the right tools and understanding the techniques.
But the other thing I'd like to add is for those of you that are very interested in this topic and want to learn more, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll be providing more information in the presentation itself and with a quick survey that we'll be sending out at the end of the call.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the true measure of value is really the perception of your customers, right? And what I like about this illustration is that you've got 2 units of measure on the tape, both metrics and in inches. Think about that, because quantifying value is, again, putting it into the language of your particular customer. All right, so we have some questions here, but before we get to those, I just want to do a quick program note. So our first webinar of 2013 is on January 23rd with Stefan Liaozu, who's an author, has a new book out called Innovation in Pricing. I strongly recommend it, and a very dynamic speaker. So stay tuned for an email to sign up for that particular webinar. And again, if you want more information about LeveragePoint, we'll be sending out a survey at the end of this webinar. You can check the box if you want us to contact us, or if you want to contact us right away, there's our telephone number. Okay, so let's take a look at the questions that have come in, and let's see here. First, just ask, how do I pull this out? All right, excellent. Oh, we have a lot of questions here. All right, thank you. Well, the one answer that we get all the time are will the slides be available? Yes, we will have the slides and the recording available within a week on our website. We'll be sending out an email on that. Okay. How do you get valid information that enables one to determine the value, from a true value from a customer's perspective?
Yeah, so this is a very common question, is how do we get the data, how do we get the information we need to be able to quantify value? And from our perspective, we feel that a lot of the insights, a lot of the data that you need to kind of begin in this journey is already, it's already there in your organization. I think you just have to go and look for it to the right places. So you may have, let's say, a customer service team that's very in close contact with customers, that they know kind of what would be the impact of something goes wrong. They have a sense of what's going on. You may also have very strong sales people that have a very clear insight into how customers operate, how they work, and bringing in those disparate pieces of information from within your organization to begin to set up your thinking and structuring your thinking around how you impact your customer's business is, from our perspective, a great place to start. You don't need to rely on too much outside research or very expensive research to be able to get this off the ground.
Yeah, just a quick addition to that. In my experience, it's understanding the logic is really the hard part. Once you've laid out what the formula is, either coming up with good estimates is pretty straightforward once you know what you're looking for. Here's one that I love. In addition to cost and revenue, what about risk? And that's a great observation. I wish we had a risk example in there. I know we've had them, but yeah, risk is definitely part of economic valuation, right?
Absolutely, and there maybe it gets a little bit more subjective, because you may have to assign probabilities of risk happening, but in many cases those risks exist, and it's really up to how you present this to the customer and how you're able to walk the customer through that logic that enables you to get that buying, enables you to make a stronger case for how you're able to minimize risk.
What risk estimations do is they take some potentially very significant, large, expensive events and to calibrate them. So even if the chance of a failure happening is 1 in 1,000, that 1,000th time can really be significant. So you have to take that into account. All right. Another great question is, how do you quantify the value of a service instead of a product? Any takes on that?
I think it's about the same process.
The same process.
What does the service that you're providing? How does that impact your customer's business? How is that helping them run their operation more smoothly? How do you combine that service to your core offering? Those are kind of things that, in many cases, your core offering itself may not provide a lot of differential value that can be quantified and provide a very strong story for. But if you were to add services that go along with your core offering, that's what begins to differentiate yourself from other competitors, and kind of putting a dollar amount to what that service means. So maybe there's related to expertise, you're able to provide technical support as a service. You can begin to engage customers in those discussions.
Yeah, and I think general observation is that with services you are talking about more intangible value than goods. I would say, especially in things like professional services, and a lot of it comes to, in many cases, reducing risk. Right? If you think about legal services, you're really reducing the exposure of lawsuits, things like that. So that's one specific example of quantifying value. Let's see.
I see another quick question here that talks about beyond really understanding economic value. customers may value things like peace of mind, comfort, aesthetics, and kind of our perspective is economic value is kind of one piece to be able to tell your story. Mm-hmm. There are other benefits that may not necessarily result in economic value, but are very important to your customers. And absolutely, those are still part of your value proposition. Those are still things that you want to emphasize. But again, when it comes to really talking to that economic buyer, to that buyer that's trying to justify a purchasing decision, the more you can articulate and show them how you impact their business from a cost and revenue perspective, the better off you'll be.
The other thing I would add to that is that, if you're talking about psychological factors, they might not be able to be quantified, but they certainly can enter into the pricing discussion. So going back to those EVE models where you're showing a high amount of differentiated value, well, how much of that value you could actually capture really depends on the psychology, right? So if folks are very, very risk averse, they're not going to allow you to charge for that extra value, right? If they have a lot of peace of mind and comfort with you, you can. So I think that's another way of getting at that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what other questions. There are some great questions here. By the way, for any questions that we don't get to, we will we take these, we put them up on our blog. So if we do miss your question today, don't worry, we'll respond to all questions in a future blog. I'm sorry, there was one that you want. How do you get the sales team to embrace this approach and be effective? Well, I'm going to let my sales guy answer that one. Roberto?
Yeah. So if you want your sales team to be effective, you first need to arm them with the tools, right? With what they need and able to engage in that discussion with a customer. So, the thinking that has gone into the value they're delivering, how can they articulate that to the customer? How can they demonstrate and create that relationship with a customer that would enable them to engage in those discussions? That's one way of doing it. Obviously, using LeveragePoint is one of the ways you get to that point, because kind of the whole application is designed to get the sales team comfortable in having those discussions with a customer. But absolutely, that's a very common challenge, and it's one that we face on a daily basis.
All right, so I think we have time. I know we're a little bit over our time, but we'll keep going because the questions are good. This is more of a question/comment. Shouldn't you start with a model of the customer's business or business process?
Yeah, I mean, if you can identify how your customers go to market, if you can identify how they operate, how they work, and you have those insights, that can be a great starting point for putting together some hypotheses or some thoughts as to how you impact that. So the more you have visibility into how your customers operate, the better off you're going to be when you're kind of trying to get started and going down this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to understand the customer's perspective to quantify value. You just cannot do it otherwise. All right. I think we've covered them all. Again, if we've missed any in the list here, we will get to them in our blog. Okay, and with that, that wraps up our webinar today. I thank everyone who watched and those who stayed a little extra for the questions. I want to say thank you. Happy holidays, Happy New Year from everyone at LeveragePoint.
Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it.